pounding on Vivian's door cut through the peaceful evening like a thunderclap. She froze, Sophia's tiny sleeper halfway zipped, recognizing the desperate rhythm of those knocks. Couldn't be. Not after a year of silence. Securing her 4-month-old daughter in her crib, Vivian moved cautiously toward the door. Through the peephole, she saw him, Marcus Donovan, the polished CEO who'd once commanded boardrooms with unwavering confidence, now standing drenched in the November rain, his expensive suit clinging to his frame, his eyes haunted by something she'd never seen before. She opened the door just enough to block the entrance, her voice as cold as the Chicago wind whipping around him. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" "Vivian, please." His voice cracked, nothing like the controlled tone that had dismissed her pregnancy a year ago. "I need to see her. Just once. You had your chance to be a father when I told you I was pregnant. You chose your company instead. Have you ever had someone walk away when you needed them most, only to return when it was convenient for them? How do you decide if someone deserves a second chance after they've broken your trust completely?" When Millionaire CEO Marcus Donovan rejected Vivian's pregnancy and offered her a check to handle the problem, she walked away with her dignity intact. Now, 1 year later, he's at her doorstep begging to meet the daughter he never wanted. But what Vivian doesn't know is that something catastrophic has changed him forever. Will she let the man who broke her heart meet their daughter? And what devastating secret is he hiding that could change everything she thought she knew about him? 5 minutes, Vivian finally said, stepping back to let Marcus enter her apartment. "That's all you get. And keep your voice down. Sophia is almost asleep." The name Sophia seemed to hit Marcus physically. He flinched, then stepped inside, water dripping from his coat onto the hardwood floor. In the warm light of her living room, Vivian could see him clearly for the first time. The man before her was a shadow of the commanding presence she remembered. His cheeks were hollow, dark circles underlined his eyes, and the confident posture that had once drawn her to him across a crowded charity gala was gone. "You look," he began, his eyes taking in her appearance, "like a woman who just spent 12 hours juggling a gallery opening and a teething baby." Vivian crossed her arms, refusing to make this easy for him. "What do you want, Marcus? Your wedding to Isabel must be, 3 weeks away now? Shouldn't you be at a rehearsal dinner or finalizing prenuptial agreements?" Something flashed in his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or shame. "The wedding is off. Has been for months." Vivian hadn't expected that. She deliberately avoided news about Marcus, asking friends not to update her on his life, removing herself from social circles where his name might arise. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said automatically, the polite response ingrained by years of social conditioning. "Are you?" His gaze was penetrating, searching for something in her expression. "What do you want?" she repeated, unwilling to be drawn into whatever game he was playing. Marcus ran a hand through his damp hair, a gesture of frustration she remembered well. "I want to meet my daughter." The words hit Vivian like a physical blow. Of all the things she had imagined he might say, this hadn't been among them. "No," she replied immediately, instinctively. "Vivian." "No, Marcus. You don't get to walk away from her existence, ignore us for months, and then just decide you're interested. That's not how this works. I know I have no right to ask." His voice dropped, the controlled CEO persona slipping to reveal something raw underneath. "I know I handled everything wrong, but please just let me see her. Once." "Why now?" Vivian demanded, anger rising to protect the hurt beneath. "What's changed?" Marcus moved to the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline for a long moment before turning back to her. "Everything's changed. I've changed. People don't change that fundamentally in 8 months, Marcus. They do when they realize they've made the biggest mistake of their lives." He took a step toward her, stopping when she tensed. "When I told you I couldn't be a father, I believed it. I was so focused on Pinnacle, on my plans, that I couldn't see anything else. Then you walked away, and I thought I could just continue as before. So you got engaged," Vivian said flatly. "A business arrangement, essentially." His mouth twisted in self-disgust. Isabel's family has connections I needed for the European expansion. It made sense on paper. How romantic. It was never about romance. That's the point. Marcus's composure cracked further. What we had, what I threw away, that was real. And I've spent every day since regretting what I did. Vivian shook her head, unwilling to be swayed by words that came months too late. Your 5 minutes are up, Marcus. Please leave. Vivian, please. A soft cry from the nursery interrupted him. Sophia, disturbed by their voices perhaps, was awake and calling for her mother. Vivian moved immediately toward the sound, but Marcus's next words stopped her. Let me see her. Just once. Then I'll go if that's what you want. Vivian hesitated, torn between protecting Sophia from the man who had rejected her before birth and acknowledging that, regardless of his past actions, Marcus was her daughter's father. Sophia would someday have questions about him, would want to know who he was. Could Vivian honestly tell her she had denied him even a single meeting? Wait here, she said finally, her voice tight. Don't touch anything. In the nursery, Sophia had settled back to drowsiness, needing only a gentle touch and soft words to drift towards sleep again. Vivian stood over the crib, watching her daughter's peaceful face, her heart aching with the weight of the decision before her. What should I do, sweet girl? She whispered. He's your father, but he hurt us both so deeply. Sophia's eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused and heavy with sleep, before closing again. Her tiny hand curled around Vivian's finger with instinctive trust. With a deep breath, Vivian made her decision. Lifting Sophia gently from the crib, she wrapped her in a soft blanket and carried her to the living room where Marcus waited, tension evident in every line of his body. He turned as they entered, and the expression that crossed his face at the sight of his daughter was unlike anything Vivian had ever seen from him. Wonder, pain, longing, and something that looked remarkably like love, all mingled together. This is Sophia, Vivian said quietly, holding her daughter securely. Sophia Grace Blackwood. Marcus stepped closer, his movements careful, reverent almost. She's beautiful, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She looks like you. She has your eyes, Vivian replied, the observation slipping out before she could stop it. And your hair. Marcus nodded, unable to speak for a moment as he gazed at the child he had rejected months ago. May I? He began, then faltered. Could I hold her? Vivian hesitated, protective instincts warring with the undeniable right of a father to hold his child at least once. Finally, she nodded, carefully transferring Sophia to Marcus's arms, showing him how to support her head and body. The moment Sophia settled against his chest, something shifted in Marcus's expression. A profound realization dawning, visible even to Vivian, who had learned long ago to guard herself against his emotional impact. Hello, Sophia, he murmured, his voice gentler than Vivian had ever heard it. I'm your. He looked up at Vivian, uncertainty in his eyes. Her father, Vivian supplied, the words costing her. Biologically, at least. Marcus nodded, returning his gaze to Sophia, who was studying his face with the solemn curiosity of infancy. I'm your father, he repeated softly, and I'm so sorry I haven't been here. Sophia, unaware of the emotional complexity surrounding her, reached up a tiny hand toward Marcus's face. When her fingers touched his cheek, he closed his eyes briefly, visibly overwhelmed. Vivian watched this interaction with conflicting emotions. Anger at Marcus for appearing now, after months of absence. Fear that his presence would disrupt the life she had carefully built for herself and Sophia. And beneath it all, a treacherous whisper of what might have been if he had made a different choice 8 months ago. After a few minutes, Sophia began to fuss, turning her head toward Vivian with the unmistakable signals of hunger and fatigue. Marcus looked up, reluctance clear in his expression as he carefully handed the baby back. Thank you, he said simply, for letting me meet her. Vivian nodded, settling Sophia against her shoulder. You should go now. She needs to sleep and I need to feed her. Of course. Marcus moved toward the door but paused before opening it. Vivian, I know I have no right to ask for anything more than what you've already given me tonight. But I'd like to be part of her life, if you'll allow it. You rejected her existence, Marcus. You offered me a check to make us go away. I know. The shame in his voice was palpable. And I will regret that for the rest of my life. But please don't punish Sophia for my mistakes. She deserves to know her father. She deserves a father who wants her unconditionally, Vivian countered. Not one who sees her as an inconvenience to his 5-year plan. I was wrong. The admission seemed torn from somewhere deep inside him. So wrong that I don't have words adequate to express it. But I'm begging, for a chance to prove that I can be the father she deserves. Sophia's fussing increased, her patience exhausted. Vivian bounced her gently, buying time as she considered Marcus's request. Part of her wanted to refuse outright, to protect both herself and Sophia from the pain Marcus could inflict if he changed his mind again. But another part, the part that had once loved this man, that recognized the genuine emotion in his eyes when he held their daughter, hesitated. I need to think about this, she said finally. This isn't just about you and me anymore. Every decision I make affects Sophia. I understand. Marcus opened the door, then turned back one last time. For what it's worth, Vivian, seeing you with her, seeing the mother you've become, I've never admired anyone more in my life. With that, he was gone, leaving Vivian standing in her living room, Sophia crying against her shoulder, and 1,000 conflicting emotions swirling through her heart. If you've ever had to make the difficult choice between protecting your heart and giving someone a second chance, hit that like button. And if you believe in standing in your worth even when it's difficult, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales for more stories of women finding their strength. The next morning, as weak winter sunlight filtered through her bedroom curtains, Vivian woke to a text message from an unknown number. Thank you for last night, for letting me meet Sophia. I meant what I said. I want to be part of her life, whatever that looks like. Marcus. She stared at the message for a long time, unsure how to respond or whether to respond at all. The events of the previous night felt almost dreamlike in the morning light. Marcus appearing at her door, the raw emotion in his eyes when he held Sophia, the vulnerability in his voice when he admitted he'd been wrong. As Vivian prepared Sophia's morning bottle, her mind replayed the encounter with Marcus. His appearance had unsettled something within her, reopening wounds she thought had healed and raising questions she had believed were settled. She called Elaine while Sophia contentedly kicked on her play mat, needing her friend's perspective. He just showed up at your door? Elaine's indignation was clear even through the phone. After 8 months of silence? Yes. Vivian shifted the phone to her other ear as she watched Sophia. And he wants to be part of her life now. What changed? Did his fiancée dump him? He says the engagement ended months ago, that it was a business arrangement that he realized was wrong. Vivian sighed. He seemed different, Elaine, genuinely affected by meeting Sophia. Of course he was affected. She's a beautiful, perfect baby. That doesn't mean he's suddenly father of the year material. Elaine's skepticism was evident. What are you thinking, Vivian? Are you considering letting him into your lives? I don't know. Vivian looked down at Sophia, who had grabbed her own toes and was examining them with fascination. Part of me wants to protect her from ever being hurt by him. But another part wonders if I have the right to keep her from knowing her father if he genuinely wants to be involved. You have every right after the way he treated you both, Elaine insisted. But I understand the dilemma. Just be careful, Vivian. Protect your heart as well as hers. After hanging up, Vivian spent the morning playing with Sophia, trying to focus on the present moment rather than the complicated decisions that lay ahead. But Marcus's visit had stirred memories she'd worked hard to suppress. Memories of the day that had changed everything. 8 months earlier, Vivian had stared at the pregnancy test in her hand, the 2 pink lines unmistakable against the white background. At 30, she had always imagined motherhood would be part of her journey. But not like this. Not unplanned and certainly not alone. She glanced around her elegant Chicago apartment, the morning sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Lake Michigan. The space reflected her success as a renowned art curator, sophisticated, carefully curated, and distinctly hers. Just like the life she'd built after walking away from corporate America 3 years ago to pursue her passion. Taking a deep breath, Vivian reached for her phone. There was only one call to make. "Marcus? It's me. We need to talk." 3 hours later, Vivian sat across from Marcus in his penthouse office, 60 floors above the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Chicago skyline, a testament to the empire he'd built from nothing. "You're certain?" His voice was measured, controlled, the same tone he used in board meetings when confronted with unexpected information. "Yes." Vivian met his gaze steadily. "I've taken 3 tests." Marcus stood, moving to the window. His reflection showed a man impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and athletic build. Success looked good on him, it always had. But now his expression was unreadable, his jaw tight. "This isn't part of my plan, Vivian." He didn't turn to face her. "I've built Pinnacle from the ground up. The next 2 years are critical for our expansion into European markets." "I understand that," she replied, her voice calm despite the tightening in her chest. "I'm not asking you to change your plans. A child changes everything." Now he turned, his dark eyes meeting hers. "You know that." "Yes, it does." Vivian straightened her shoulders. "And I've decided to have this baby, Marcus. I'm not here to ask your permission. I'm here because you deserve to know." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, at her certainty. Marcus Donovan wasn't accustomed to people making life-altering decisions without his input. "I can't be a father, Vivian." His voice was firm, final. "Not now. Maybe not ever. My life, my company, they require my complete focus. I'm not asking you to be anything you don't want to be." She kept her voice steady, though each word cost her. "I'm simply informing you of my decision." Marcus moved to his desk, his movements deliberate as he opened a drawer and withdrew his checkbook. The gesture hit Vivian like a physical blow. "Don't." She stood abruptly. "Don't you dare. Be reasonable, Vivian." His tone was pragmatic, as if they were discussing a business transaction. "You'll need support. I'm prepared to provide it." "What I need," she said, gathering her purse, "is respect. Not a payoff. That's not what this is. Isn't it?" She moved toward the door, dignity intact despite the trembling in her hands. "You've made your position clear, Marcus. Now I'm making mine. I don't want your money. I don't need your reluctant involvement. What I wanted was for you to know about your child. Now you do." "Vivian, wait." For the first time, his composure slipped. "Let's discuss this rationally." "There's nothing more to discuss." She paused at the door. "You've rejected this pregnancy and by extension, me. I won't subject myself or my child to that kind of conditional acceptance." As the elevator doors closed behind her, Vivian finally allowed the tears to fall. She had known this might be his reaction. Marcus Donovan had built his reputation on calculated decisions and unwavering focus. Children had never featured in the future he described. Still, some foolish part of her had hoped. By the time she reached the lobby, Vivian had wiped away her tears and straightened her shoulders. She was 30 years old, financially secure, and surrounded by friends who were like family. She could do this alone. She would do this alone. The memory of that day still had the power to hurt, Vivian realized as she returned to the present. Sophia had fallen asleep on her play mat, one tiny fist curled against her cheek. Looking at her daughter now, Vivian couldn't imagine a world where she had made a different choice. Whatever pain Marcus had caused, Sophia was worth it all. Her phone chimed with another text from Marcus. "I know you need time. I respect that. But I want you to know I'm serious about being in Sophia's life. Whatever terms you set, I'll accept them." By afternoon, Vivian had made a decision. She would allow Marcus Limited supervised time with Sophia, not for his sake, but for her daughter's. She would establish clear boundaries and expectations, and at the first sign that he was not fully committed, she would end the arrangement. Sophia's emotional well-being had to come first. She was composing a message to this effect when her doorbell rang. Checking the peephole, she saw a delivery person holding an enormous basket. "Delivery for Vivian Blackwood," the young woman announced, handing over the elaborate arrangement. Inside the apartment, Vivian set the basket on her dining table and found the card nestled among baby books, soft toys, and what appeared to be a hand-carved wooden music box. For Sophia to begin building the library and toy collection she deserves. The music box plays Debussy's Clair de Lune. "I remember you saying it was your favorite piece to fall asleep to. I hope someday it might be hers as well. No pressure, no expectations. Just a father wanting to give something to his daughter. Marcus." Vivian sat down heavily, the card trembling in her fingers. The thoughtfulness of the gift caught her off guard. Not its extravagance, which was to be expected from a man of Marcus's wealth, but the personal touches that showed he had actually listened during their relationship, had remembered details about her that she herself had almost forgotten. The wooden music box was exquisite, clearly custom-made, with Sophia's name and birth date carved delicately into the lid. When Vivian opened it, the gentle notes of Clair de Lune filled the room, and Sophia, who had been fussing in her bouncer, immediately quieted, turning her head toward the sound. "You like that, don't you?" Vivian murmured, lifting her daughter and holding her close as the music played. "It was my favorite once, too." The moment crystallized something for Vivian, a recognition that regardless of her complicated feelings toward Marcus, he was Sophia's father, and if he was genuinely committed to being present in her life, Vivian needed to find a way to make that possible while protecting them both. She reached for her phone and typed a response to his earlier message. The basket arrived. "Thank you for the thoughtful gifts, especially the music box. If you're serious about being part of Sophia's life, we need to talk about what that looks like. Coffee tomorrow, 10 a.m., at Lakefront Cafe. Just you and me. We'll discuss ground rules before you see her again." His response came almost immediately. "I'll be there. Thank you, Vivian. More than I can express." The Lakefront Cafe was busy with the morning rush when Vivian arrived, Sophia securely strapped to her chest in a baby carrier. She debated leaving her daughter with Elaine for this meeting, but something had made her bring Sophia along. Perhaps a subconscious test of Marcus's reaction to the realities of parenthood, the noise and unpredictability of life with an infant. Marcus was already there, seated at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. He stood when he saw them, his eyes immediately going to Sophia, who was awake and alert, taking in the colorful cafe environment. "You brought her," he said, surprise and pleasure evident in his voice. "She's part of this conversation," Vivian replied, settling into the chair he held for her. "And I wanted to see how you handle a public setting with a potentially fussy baby." Marcus nodded, accepting the test for what it was. "How do I help? Do you want me to hold her while you drink your coffee? Or is there something else she needs?" The question was so practical, so focused on Sophia's needs rather than his desire to hold her again, that Vivian felt a flicker of surprise. "I'm fine for now. She just ate and should be content for a while." They sat in awkward silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history and uncertain future hanging between them. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Thank you for meeting with me. I know you have every reason to shut me out completely. I'm here for Sophia," Vivian clarified. "She deserves to know her father if he's genuinely committed to being in her life. But I need to understand what changed, Marcus. 8 months ago, you couldn't get away from us fast enough. Now you're sending custom music boxes and begging to be involved. What happened?" Marcus took a deep breath, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup as if drawing strength from its warmth. "After you left my office that day, I told myself I'd made the rational decision, that I was being responsible by recognizing my limitations. But the truth is, I was a coward. That doesn't answer my question. I'm getting there." He met her gaze directly. 3 months after you left, the European expansion I was so focused on began to fall apart. The partners I'd been courting backed out at the last minute. The market shifted. Suddenly, everything I'd sacrificed for, including you and Sophia, was in jeopardy. Vivian raised an eyebrow. "So when your business plans failed, you decided a family might be nice after all?" "No. Marcus shook his head firmly. It wasn't that simple. The collapse of the deal was just the beginning. My mentor, Lawrence Harrington, the man who gave me my first investment opportunity, who'd been like a father to me, orchestrated the whole thing. He used information I'd shared with him in confidence to undermine the deal, then launched a hostile takeover attempt of Pinnacle. Why would he do that? Because I'd become exactly the kind of man he could manipulate. Someone so focused on success that I'd lost sight of what matters. Someone who would sacrifice anything and anyone for the next deal. Marcus's voice grew quieter. He told me, right before he made his move, that he'd been watching me become a man he couldn't respect. That the final straw was hearing how I'd handled your pregnancy. Sophia began to fuss slightly, and without thinking, Vivian adjusted her position, swaying gently in her seat. Marcus watched the natural movement with undisguised admiration. "You're amazing with her," he said softly. "Practice," Vivian replied. "Continue your story." The takeover attempt failed, but it cost me nearly everything to fight it. More importantly, it forced me to look at who I'd become. The man who could write a check to solve a pregnancy. The man who could get engaged to someone he didn't love for business connections. The man who had everything and nothing at the same time. "So this is about your midlife crisis? Finding meaning after your business setback. This is about realizing that I threw away the only real thing in my life." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes intense. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Vivian. I don't even expect you to believe me right now. But I am asking for the chance to prove, through actions and not just words, that I can be the father Sophia deserves." Vivian studied him, looking for signs of the calculating businessman she'd known. The man who approached every situation with an angle, a strategy. Instead, she saw something new, a rawness, a humility that the old Marcus would have considered weakness. "If, and this is a big if, I allow you to be part of Sophia's life, there would be conditions," she said finally. "Non-negotiable ones. Name them." "First, we start small. Short, supervised visits. No overnight stays until I'm completely confident in your commitment. Second, you respect my role as her primary parent. My decisions about her care, her schedule, her needs come first. Third, no lavish gifts or attempts to buy her affection or mine." Marcus nodded, accepting each condition without argument. "Anything else?" "Yes. At the first sign that you're losing interest or that your commitment is wavering, it's over. I won't have Sophia experience the pain of being abandoned twice." "I understand." Marcus hesitated, then added, "May I suggest something as well?" Vivian tensed slightly. "What?" "I'd like to contribute financially to Sophia's future. A trust fund for her education and security. Not as a way to buy involvement, but as a responsibility I should have assumed from the beginning. You would control it until she's of age." Vivian considered this. The practical part of her recognized that such security would benefit Sophia enormously. The protective part worried about strings attached. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "For now, let's start with the visits and see how those go." "That's fair." Marcus glanced at Sophia, who had dozed off against Vivian's chest. "When can I see her again?" "Saturday morning. My apartment. 10 to 11. Bring coffee but no gifts." A smile, genuine, without the practiced charm he'd once wielded so effectively, transformed Marcus's face. "I'll be there. Thank you, Vivian. I know I don't deserve this chance." "No, you don't," she agreed, rising carefully to avoid waking Sophia. "But she deserves to know her father. Don't make me regret this, Marcus." As she walked away, Vivian felt both uncertainty and a strange sense of peace. She had no idea if Marcus's transformation was genuine or lasting, but she had made the decision that felt right for Sophia. The rest would reveal itself with time. Have you ever had to rebuild your life from scratch like Vivian did? Share your story of resilience in the comments below. And if you know a strong woman who's raising a child on her own, tag her to let her know how much you admire her strength. The birth of Sophia had been Vivian's most profound experience. A moment when pain and joy, fear and triumph had merged into something transcendent. She had labored for 14 hours at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta, with Elaine by her side, coaching and encouraging her through each contraction. "You're doing beautifully," Elaine had whispered as Vivian entered the transition phase, the most intense part of labor. "She's almost here, Vivian. Your daughter is almost here." When Sophia finally emerged into the world at 8:17 p.m., her lusty cry filling the delivery room, Vivian had felt a love so overwhelming it seemed to physically expand her chest. The doctor placed the squirming, wet infant on her chest, and time seemed to stop as Vivian gazed down at her daughter. Tiny, pink, and absolutely perfect with a shock of dark hair like her father's. "Hello, Sophia," she had whispered, the name she had chosen months ago. "I'm your mom." Elaine, wiping away her own tears, had leaned in to see the baby. "She's magnificent, Vivian. Absolutely magnificent." In that moment, any lingering doubts about her decision to have this baby alone had vanished. Sophia was worth everything: the morning sickness, the career adjustments, the move to Atlanta, the absence of a partner. Looking at her daughter's perfect face, Vivian had known with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. Later that night, when Elaine had gone to Vivian's apartment to rest and the hospital had quieted, Vivian lay in her bed with Sophia sleeping peacefully in the bassinet beside her. In the dim light, she studied her daughter's features, the curve of her cheek, the tiny perfect fingers, the unmistakable resemblance to Marcus in the shape of her brow. "We did it, little one," she whispered. "Just you and me. And that's how it's going to be." But even as she said the words, a small ache persisted in her heart. Not regret, exactly, but a wistfulness for what might have been if Marcus had made a different choice. If he had seen this miracle as something to embrace rather than avoid. The first months of motherhood had been a revelation to Vivian. Exhausting, exhilarating, and more emotionally complex than she had anticipated. Sophia was an easy baby by most standards, nursing well and sleeping in decent stretches, but the responsibility of being her daughter's entire world sometimes felt overwhelming. Elaine had stayed in Atlanta for 2 weeks after the birth, helping Vivian establish routines and gain confidence in her new role. When she returned to Chicago, the apartment had felt emptier, but Vivian found strength in the community she had built in Atlanta. Her colleagues at the museum who brought meals and offered childcare, the mothers group she joined that met weekly in Piedmont Park, the doula who checked in regularly. At 3 months, Vivian's assignment at the Atlanta Museum had come to an end, and she had faced a decision: return to Chicago or make Atlanta her permanent home. Chicago held her established career, her closest friends, the life she had built over years. But it also held Marcus, who at that time she believed was just weeks away from his December wedding to Isabel Mercer. "What do you think, sweet girl?" Vivian had asked Sophia one evening as they rocked in the nursery. "Should we go home to Chicago?" Sophia had gazed up at her with eyes that had lightened to a warm amber, so like her father's that sometimes it took Vivian's breath away. The baby had offered a gummy smile that melted Vivian's heart. "You're right," Vivian had decided. "We face things head-on in this family. Chicago it is." Now, as Vivian prepared for Marcus's first scheduled visit with Sophia, those memories of Atlanta felt both recent and distant. So much had changed in the short time since their return to Chicago, most significantly, Marcus's unexpected reappearance in their lives. Saturday morning arrived with a light snowfall that dusted Chicago's streets with white. Vivian had been up since dawn, not from Sophia's needs but from her own nervous energy. She'd cleaned the already tidy apartment, dressed Sophia in a sweet but not overly fancy outfit, and tried to calm the butterflies in her stomach. "This is for you," she told Sophia as she settled her daughter in her bouncer. "Not about me or my complicated feelings about your father." At precisely 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Marcus stood there with 2 coffee cups and a tentative smile, snowflakes melting in his dark hair. "Right on time," Vivian observed, accepting the coffee he offered. "I wouldn't waste a minute," he replied, following her into the apartment. His eyes immediately sought Sophia, who was contentedly batting at the toys hanging from her bouncer. "Good morning, Sophia." To Vivian's surprise, he didn't immediately approach the baby, instead waiting for her cue. She appreciated this small sign of respect for her boundaries. "You can sit with her," Vivian said, gesturing to the floor near the bouncer. "She's usually happy in there for a while after breakfast." Marcus lowered himself to the floor, setting his coffee aside and focusing entirely on Sophia. "Hello there," he said softly. "Do you remember me? I'm your dad." Sophia regarded him solemnly for a moment before breaking into a gummy smile that transformed her face. Marcus looked up at Vivian with wonder. "She smiled at me," he said, sounding both surprised and deeply moved. "She's a friendly baby," Vivian replied, though she had to admit that Sophia's immediate positive response to Marcus was noteworthy. "She likes new faces." For the next hour, Vivian watched as Marcus interacted with their daughter. He seemed to have done his research, knowing how to engage a 4-month-old appropriately, offering toys within her reach, responding to her coos with animated expressions, respecting her cues when she needed a break from stimulation. When Sophia began to fuss, signaling the end of her happy awake time, Marcus looked to Vivian for guidance. "She's getting tired," Vivian explained. "She'll need a nap soon." "May I help you get her ready?" he asked. "Or would you prefer to handle it?" Again, Vivian was struck by his deference to her expertise as Sophia's mother. "You can come with us to the nursery. I'll show you her bedtime routine, though we'll keep it shorter for a nap." In the nursery, Vivian demonstrated how she prepared Sophia for sleep. A fresh diaper, a sleep sack, a few minutes of gentle rocking while singing softly. To her surprise, Marcus began to hum along with the lullaby she chose, his deep voice harmonizing with hers. "My mother used to sing that to me," he explained when he caught Vivian's questioning look. "It's one of the few clear memories I have of her." Vivian hadn't known this, that Marcus had lost his mother at a young age. It was a piece of his history he'd never shared during their relationship, and it made her wonder what other parts of himself he had kept hidden. Once Sophia was asleep in her crib, they retreated to the living room, the dynamic between them shifting now that their buffer was napping. "Thank you for today," Marcus said, his voice low to avoid disturbing Sophia through the baby monitor. Seeing her, being part of even this small moment of her life, it means everything. Vivian studied him, still searching for signs of the calculating man she'd known. "You were good with her, better than I expected. I've been reading everything I can find about infant development," he admitted, "and watching probably too many parenting videos online. I wanted to be prepared." The image of Marcus Donovan, the ruthless CEO who had built a financial empire, studying baby books and watching parenting tutorials was so incongruous that Vivian almost smiled. "One visit doesn't make you a father," she said instead, keeping her tone measured. "It's the consistency that matters. Being there day after day, through tantrums and illnesses and ordinary moments." "I know." Marcus met her gaze directly. "And I'm prepared for all of it. The good, the challenging, the mundane. I want the whole experience of being her father, not just the Instagram-worthy moments." "We'll see," Vivian replied, unwilling to fully trust his commitment yet. "Same time next Saturday? I'll be here." He rose to leave, then hesitated. "Vivian, there's something else I'd like to discuss, but not today. When you're ready, I'd like to tell you more about what happened with Pinnacle and why it changed me. Not as an excuse, but as an explanation." Vivian nodded, curious despite herself. "Maybe next time after Sophia's nap, we could talk while she plays." "I'd like that." Marcus moved toward the door, then turned back. "She's extraordinary, Vivian, just like her mother." After he left, Vivian sat alone in the quiet apartment, processing the morning. Marcus had been different, attentive, respectful, focused entirely on Sophia rather than on his own desires or agenda. It was as if the man who had coldly rejected her pregnancy had been replaced by someone new. But people didn't change so fundamentally without reason. What had really happened to transform Marcus Donovan from the man who had offered her a check to handle her pregnancy to the man who sat on her floor today, completely enchanted by their daughter's smile? The following Saturday unfolded similarly, with Marcus arriving precisely on time, engaging beautifully with Sophia, and respecting all of Vivian's boundaries. After they put Sophia down for her nap, Vivian made tea and steeled herself for the conversation Marcus had requested. Tell me what happened, she said as they settled on opposite ends of her sofa. With Pinnacle and the European expansion. Marcus took a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts. The short version is that I failed spectacularly. The longer version is that my failure was the best thing that could have happened to me. Explain. The European expansion was meant to be my crowning achievement, the move that would take Pinnacle from a national success to a global powerhouse. His voice held no pride as he recounted this, only a kind of detached reflection. I'd been working on it for years, cultivating relationships with key European investors, particularly the Mercer family. Isabel's family, Vivian noted. Yes, banking dynasty, old money, connections throughout the EU financial world. When I met Isabel at a finance conference, the attraction was immediate, not romantic attraction, but strategic. She was intelligent, well-connected, and interested in a partnership that would benefit us both. So you got engaged. It made sense on paper. Marcus's mouth twisted in self-disgust. A merger of assets and influence, essentially. I convinced myself it was the mature approach to relationships. Practical, advantageous, uncomplicated by messy emotions. Unlike what we had, Vivian couldn't help saying. Exactly unlike what we had. His eyes met hers briefly before looking away. What I felt for you scared me, Vivian. It wasn't controllable or predictable. It didn't fit into my 5-year plan. And a baby definitely didn't. No, the admission was quiet but clear. When you told me you were pregnant, all I could see was the threat to everything I'd built, everything I was working toward. I couldn't imagine reconfiguring my life, my goals, my identity to include being a father. So what changed? Vivian pressed. You still haven't explained the transformation. Marcus set down his tea, his expression growing more serious. 3 months after you left, just weeks before the European deal was set to close, everything fell apart. Lawrence Harrington, my mentor, the man who gave me my start, used information I'd shared with him to approach my European partners directly. He convinced them that Pinnacle was overextended, that my leadership was compromised by personal issues. What personal issues? You. Marcus met her gaze directly. He told them I'd abandoned my pregnant girlfriend, that I was engaged to Isabel purely for her family connections, that I couldn't be trusted to honor personal commitments, so how could I be trusted in business? Vivian felt a chill. How did he know about me? About the pregnancy? Because I told him. Shame colored Marcus's voice. The day you told me you were pregnant, I called him for advice. I presented it as a problem to be solved, an obstacle to the European expansion. He listened, asked a few questions, then said something I dismissed at the time. The measure of a man isn't what he achieves, but what he's willing to sacrifice to achieve it. Sounds like wisdom to me, Vivian observed. I thought he was validating my decision to prioritize Pinnacle. I was wrong. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He was testing me and I failed spectacularly. When he sabotaged the European deal, he didn't just cost me billions in potential revenue. He launched a hostile takeover attempt of Pinnacle itself. Why would he do that? To teach me a lesson. Marcus's voice held a mixture of bitterness and reluctant respect. The night before he made his move public, he invited me to dinner. Told me he'd watched me become someone he couldn't respect. Someone who valued deals over people, who saw relationships as transactions, who would abandon his own child for the sake of business expansion. Sophia made a small sound through the baby monitor, and both parents paused, listening. When she settled back to sleep, Marcus continued. I fought the takeover with everything I had. Liquidated personal assets, called in favors, worked 20-hour days. In the end, I managed to maintain control of Pinnacle, but the company was wounded, my reputation damaged. The European expansion was dead. My engagement to Isabel ended when her family pulled their support. So you lost everything you'd prioritized over us? Vivian summarized, trying to keep the satisfaction from her voice. Yes, and in losing it, I found clarity. Marcus looked at her directly. With nothing left to distract me, I had to face what I'd done. To you, to Sophia, to myself. I realized I'd been building an empire that meant nothing because I had no one to share it with, No purpose beyond accumulation and achievement. That's quite an epiphany. It wasn't instant. It took months of reflection, therapy, rebuilding Pinnacle with different values. He hesitated, then added, and searching for you. When I discovered you'd moved to Atlanta, I nearly followed you there. But I knew I needed to become someone worthy of being in your lives first. And you think you've done that? Vivian challenged. I think I'm trying, he replied honestly. Every day, I've restructured Pinnacle to prioritize ethical investment and employee well-being over pure profit. I sold the penthouse and moved to a smaller place. I've reconnected with the charitable foundation my mother started before she died. But most importantly, I've confronted the fear that drove me to reject you and Sophia. What fear was that? The fear of failing at the one thing that really matters, being a good parent. His voice grew quieter. My father was a distant, demanding man who measured love in achievements. After my mother died, he sent me to boarding school and remarried within a year. I grew up believing that emotional connections were dangerous, that success was the only security. When you told me about the pregnancy, all I could think was that I would inevitably fail as a father because I had no model for how to do it right. Vivian hadn't known this about Marcus's childhood. During their relationship, he had rarely spoken about his family, deflecting personal questions with practiced ease. This vulnerability, this willingness to examine his own wounds and motivations, was entirely new. The irony, he continued, is that in trying to avoid failing as a father, I committed the worst failure possible. I abandoned my child before she was even born. Before Vivian could respond, Sophia's cries came through the monitor, signaling the end of her nap. Both parents rose immediately. May I? Marcus asked, gesturing toward the nursery. Vivian nodded, following him as he went to retrieve their daughter. Watching him lift Sophia gently from her crib, murmuring soothing words as she transitioned from sleep to wakefulness, Vivian felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. If the story is touching your heart, give it a thumbs up. And if you believe people can truly change when faced with life's biggest challenges, subscribe to Mr. Harrison's channel for more stories that explore the depth of human transformation. Over the next few weeks, Marcus proved his commitment through consistent presence and respect for Vivian's boundaries. He never missed a scheduled visit, always arrived prepared with knowledge about Sophia's developmental stage, and deferred to Vivian's expertise as her mother. He didn't push for more time than she offered, but made the most of every minute he had with their daughter. Gradually, Vivian extended the visits, first to 2 hours, then to a morning that included lunch, then to an afternoon that stretched into early evening. She watched carefully for signs that Marcus's interest might be waning, that this was merely a phase or a challenge to be conquered. Instead, she saw his attachment to Sophia deepening, his patience growing, his joy in her small developments genuine. One Saturday in early December, as Chicago prepared for the holiday season, Vivian faced an unexpected crisis. The gallery where she worked was hosting a major exhibition opening that evening, and her childcare arrangements had fallen through at the last minute. Elaine was in New York visiting family, and the backup sitter had called with the flu. After exhausting all other options, Vivian reluctantly called Marcus, who was scheduled to see Sophia the following day. I hate to ask this, she began, but I'm in a bind. The Keller exhibition opens tonight, and my sitter just canceled. Is there any chance you could watch Sophia for a few hours? I understand if you can't on such short notice. Of course I can, Marcus replied without hesitation. What time do you need me? The opening is from 7 to 10, so I'd need to leave by 6:30 and won't be back until around 11. It's much longer than you've had her before, and it includes bedtime routine, which can be tricky. Vivian, Marcus said gently, I'm her father. I want to be there for both of you, especially in moments like this. Just tell me what I need to know about her bedtime routine, and we'll be fine. Relief washed over Vivian, followed immediately by anxiety. This would be the first time Marcus had been alone with Sophia, the first real test of his parenting abilities without Vivian's supervision. I'll write everything down, she promised. And I'll have my phone with me if you have any questions. We'll be fine, Marcus assured her. This is important for your career. Let me help. When Marcus arrived that evening, Vivian spent 30 minutes walking him through Sophia's routine, the specific temperature for her bottle, the order of bedtime activities, the white noise machine settings, where to find extra diapers, and the emergency contact information. And if she gets fussy, sometimes the music box you gave her helps, Vivian added, already dressed in her black cocktail dress for the gallery opening but reluctant to leave. Marcus listened attentively, making mental notes of everything. Vivian, he said finally, checking his watch. You're going to be late. We've got this, don't we, Sophia? He bounced the baby gently in his arms, earning a delighted gurgle. Okay, I'm going. Vivian kissed Sophia's head, inhaling her sweet baby scent. Be good for your dad, sweetheart. The word dad slipped out naturally, and both adults noticed. It was the first time Vivian had referred to Marcus that way to Sophia. We'll be fine, Marcus repeated, walking her to the door. Go shine at your opening. You've worked hard for this. Throughout the evening, as Vivian navigated the crowded gallery, discussing the exhibition with critics and collectors, her phone remained blessedly quiet except for 2 text messages from Marcus. One a photo of Sophia smiling in her bath, captioned, "Clean baby," and another an hour later showing her sleeping peacefully in her crib with the simple message, "Mission accomplished. She went down perfectly. Enjoy your evening." When Vivian returned home just after 11, she found her apartment tidier than she'd left it, with Marcus reading quietly on her sofa. How was it? He asked, setting aside his book. She didn't give you any trouble? Vivian asked, slipping off her heels. None at all. We read books, had a bath, and she fell asleep during the second lullaby. He smiled. She's an amazing little person, Vivian. You've done an incredible job with her. The simple acknowledgement of her efforts as a mother touched Vivian deeply. Thank you for doing this, she said. It meant a lot to be able to focus on the opening without worrying. Anytime, Marcus replied, gathering his coat. I mean that, day or night, weekday or weekend. If you need me, I'm here for both of you. After he left, Vivian checked on Sophia, finding her daughter sleeping peacefully exactly as in the photo Marcus had sent. Something had shifted tonight, she realized. A threshold had been crossed. For the first time, she had trusted Marcus with their daughter completely, and he had proven himself worthy of that trust. The following week brought another unexpected development. Vivian received a call from the gallery owner, Lawrence Keller, with disturbing news. We've got a problem, Lawrence said without preamble. Our primary investor is pulling out of the spring exhibition series. Says he's redirecting his funds to a gallery in New York. That's half our operating budget for next year, Vivian replied, alarm rising. Can we find another investor this late? I'm trying, but it's not looking good. We might have to scale back significantly, maybe even let some staff go. After the call ended, Vivian sat at her kitchen table, mind racing. The gallery had been her professional home since returning to Chicago, offering her the flexible schedule she needed as a single mother, while still allowing her to pursue her passion for art curation. If it downsized or, worse, closed entirely, her options would be limited. Without thinking, she called Marcus. I need advice, she said when he answered. Not money, she added quickly. Just your business perspective. I'm listening, he replied. Vivian explained the situation with the gallery's funding crisis. I know you've dealt with investors backing out before. How do you handle it? First, you need to understand why they're really leaving, Marcus said thoughtfully. The New York excuse might be legitimate, or it might be covering something else. Concerns about the gallery's direction, a personal conflict with Lawrence, or simply a better offer elsewhere. How do I find that out? Direct conversation is best, but investors often won't be completely candid. Sometimes you need to approach it indirectly, through mutual connections or by examining the timing of their decision. They talked for nearly an hour, with Marcus offering practical suggestions for identifying alternative funding sources, restructuring the exhibition schedule to reduce costs without sacrificing quality, and approaching specific collectors who might be interested in becoming investors. "Thank you," Vivian said finally. "This gives me somewhere to start at least." "Happy to help," Marcus replied. "And Vivian, if you need me to make some calls, connect you with potential investors in my network, I'm willing to do that. No strings attached, no involvement from me beyond the introduction." The offer was tempting, but Vivian hesitated. "Let me try the other approaches first. I don't want to solve this by leveraging your connections." "I understand, but the offer stands if you change your mind." 2 days later, after several dead ends, Vivian reluctantly called Marcus back. "About those introductions," she began. "I'll set up 3 meetings for next week," he replied without hesitation. "These are people who genuinely appreciate art and have the means to invest. All I'll do is make the introduction and vouch for your expertise. The rest will be entirely up to you." True to his word, Marcus arranged the meetings and then stepped back completely. Vivian met with each potential investor on her own, presenting the gallery's vision and upcoming exhibitions with passion and precision. By the end of the week, she had secured commitments that not only replaced the lost funding, but increased it by 20%. When she called to thank him, Marcus's response surprised her. "You did this, not me. I just opened a few doors. You walked through them on your own merit." His willingness to help without taking credit or control, to support her career without making her feel indebted, was yet another sign of how much he had changed. The old Marcus would have used the situation to demonstrate his power, to create an obligation. This Marcus seemed genuinely happy to see her succeed independently. As Christmas approached, Elaine suggested hosting a small holiday gathering at her home. "Just close friends," she said. "And I think you should invite Marcus." Vivian nearly dropped the phone. "You want me to invite Marcus? You, who called him every unflattering name in the book when he rejected the pregnancy." "People can change," Elaine replied, though her tone suggested she remained skeptical. "He's been consistent with Sophia for nearly 2 months now, and he helped you with the gallery situation without trying to take over. I think it's time I met this new version of him, if only to judge for myself whether the transformation is genuine." The holiday gathering was intimate, just Elaine, Vivian's closest friend from the gallery, Rebecca, and her husband, plus Marcus and Sophia. Vivian felt strangely nervous as she prepared for the evening, uncertain how Marcus would interact with her chosen family, particularly Elaine, who had been her fiercest defender during the pregnancy. Marcus arrived exactly on time, bearing thoughtful gifts for everyone. A rare first edition for Elaine, who collected books, artisanal chocolates for Rebecca and her husband, and for Sophia, a simple stuffed elephant that immediately became her favorite toy. "Nothing for me?" Vivian teased as she helped him with his coat. "Yours is being delivered tomorrow," he replied with a mysterious smile. "It wouldn't fit in my car." Throughout the evening, Vivian watched as Marcus navigated the potentially awkward social situation with grace. He was respectful with Elaine, engaging her on topics she was passionate about without trying too hard to win her approval. He was warm with Rebecca and her husband, showing genuine interest in their lives without dominating the conversation. And he was attentive to Sophia's needs, seamlessly taking over when she became fussy, changing her diaper without being asked, preparing her bottle exactly as Vivian had taught him. Later, as Marcus gently rocked a sleepy Sophia near the Christmas tree, Elaine cornered Vivian in the kitchen. "Okay, I admit it," she said quietly. "He's different. The man I met during your relationship would never have sat on the floor playing peekaboo for 20 minutes or excused himself from a conversation to change a diaper." "I know," Vivian agreed, watching Marcus through the doorway. "Sometimes I can hardly believe it's the same person." "Do you trust it?" Elaine asked directly. "This change in him?" Vivian considered the question carefully. "I'm starting to. His actions have been consistent. He respects my boundaries. He puts Sophia's needs first. And he seems genuinely committed to being a father, not just when it's convenient or fun, but all the time." "And what about the two of you?" Elaine's gaze was shrewd. "I see the way he looks at you when you're not watching." "There is no two of us," Vivian insisted, though she felt a flush rising to her cheeks. "We're co-parents, nothing more." Elaine hummed skeptically. "Just be careful, Vivian. I believe he's changed as a father. I'm less convinced about him as a partner." "That's not even on the table," Vivian protested. But later that night, as Marcus prepared to leave, something shifted between them. Sophia had fallen asleep in his arms, and he carried her to Vivian's car, securing her carefully in the car seat with practiced movements. In the glow of the street lights, with snowflakes drifting around them, he looked up at Vivian with an expression that made her heart skip. "Thank you for including me tonight," he said softly. "It meant a lot to be part of your holiday celebration." "You're Sophia's father," Vivian replied, her voice equally quiet. "You should be part of these moments." "Is that the only reason?" His question hung in the cold air between them. Before Vivian could answer, Rebecca and her husband emerged from Elaine's house, calling goodbyes and breaking the moment. Marcus stepped back, his expression returning to friendly neutrality. "I'll see you Saturday," he said, referring to their regular visitation schedule. "Drive safely." As Vivian drove home with Sophia sleeping peacefully in the back seat, she found herself replaying that moment, the question in Marcus's eyes, the tension that had briefly connected them. Was Elaine right? Was there still something between them beyond their shared love for Sophia? And more importantly, could she ever trust him with her heart again after he had broken it so completely? The next morning, Vivian was awakened by her doorbell. Opening the door in her robe, she found a delivery person with a large, carefully wrapped package. "Special delivery for Vivian Blackwood," the young man announced. "Where would you like it?" Once the package was in her living room and the delivery person gone, Vivian found a card attached in Marcus's handwriting. "For the woman who has created beauty in every aspect of her life, including our daughter. Merry Christmas, Marcus." Unwrapping the package revealed a stunning piece of art, a mixed media work by an emerging artist Vivian had mentioned admiring months ago, before she'd even told Marcus about the pregnancy. He had remembered, had tracked down a piece by this specific artist, had chosen something that perfectly complemented her aesthetic. The thoughtfulness of the gift moved her deeply. It wasn't extravagant in the way the old Marcus might have chosen, showing off his wealth. Instead, it was personal, meaningful, selected with genuine understanding of who she was and what she valued. As she hung the piece on her living room wall, Vivian realized that the careful boundaries she had built around her heart were beginning to crumble. Despite her best efforts to keep Marcus firmly in the co-parent-only category, she was starting to see him differently, to recognize the man he was becoming, not just the man who had hurt her. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. 6 months after Marcus's first appearance at her door, Vivian had to acknowledge how thoroughly he had integrated himself into their lives. He had proven his commitment through consistent presence, unwavering respect for her boundaries, and genuine devotion to Sophia. What had begun as strictly supervised, time-limited visits had evolved into a flexible co-parenting arrangement where Marcus was a regular, reliable presence. Sophia, now 10 months old and crawling everywhere, lit up whenever her father appeared. She had specific toys and books she seemed to associate with him, games they played together that had their own rhythms and rituals. Watching them together, Vivian could see the bond strengthening daily. Marcus's patient encouragement as Sophia attempted new skills, his delight in her accomplishments, his comfort when she was frustrated or tired. More surprising was how her own relationship with Marcus had evolved. The wariness and resentment that had colored their early interactions had gradually given way to mutual respect, then to a tentative friendship, and now to something more complex, an undercurrent of attraction and connection that neither of them had acknowledged directly but that hummed between them nonetheless. One evening in May, after Marcus had spent the day with them at a lakeside park, he lingered after putting Sophia to bed, helping Vivian clean up the dinner dishes. "I've been thinking," he said as he dried a plate, "about how far we've come since that night I showed up at your door." "It's been quite a journey," Vivian agreed, handing him another dish. "I know we've been focused on building a healthy co-parenting relationship, on making sure Sophia has both of us in her life in a positive way." He set down the towel, turning to face her fully. "And I think we've done that." She's thriving, Vivian. You've allowed me to be a real father to her, and I'm grateful every day for that chance. You've earned it, Vivian said simply. You've proven yourself consistently. Thank you for saying that. His voice grew softer. But there's something else I need to say, something I've been holding back because I didn't want to complicate our progress with Sophia. Vivian felt her heart rate accelerate. What is it? I'm still in love with you, Vivian. I never stopped loving you, even when I was too blind and selfish to recognize what that meant. His eyes held hers steadily. I'm not asking for anything. I don't expect you to forgive what I did or to trust me with your heart again. I just needed you to know that for me, this isn't just about being Sophia's father. It's about loving both of you, even if all I can ever be to you is a co-parent. The confession hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable in a way the old Marcus could never have been. Vivian found herself speechless, a tumult of emotions rising within her. Fear, hope, lingering hurt, and beneath it all, the undeniable truth that despite everything, her feelings for him had never fully died. I don't know what to say, she admitted finally. You don't need to say anything, Marcus assured her. I didn't tell you this to pressure you or to change our arrangement. I just couldn't keep pretending that my feelings for you aren't a part of this equation. I need time, Vivian said, her voice barely above a whisper. This is a lot to process. Take all the time you need. He gathered his jacket, preparing to leave. Nothing has to change unless you want it to. After he left, Vivian sat alone in her kitchen for a long time, turning his words over in her mind. Was she falling in love with Marcus again? Or had she never truly fallen out of love with him, despite the pain he had caused? And even if she did love him, could she ever fully trust him not to hurt her again? The questions had no easy answers, but as she checked on Sophia one last time before bed, watching her daughter sleep peacefully surrounded by toys from both her parents, Vivian realized that whatever happened between her and Marcus romantically, they had already succeeded at the most important thing, creating a loving, stable family for their child, even if its shape was different from what either of them had originally imagined. What would you have done in Vivian's position? Would you have given Marcus another chance? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories about women who rise from heartbreak stronger than before, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. 2 weeks after Marcus's confession, Vivian invited him to dinner after Sophia was asleep. She had spent the intervening time in deep reflection, talking with Elaine, journaling her thoughts, and examining her feelings with brutal honesty. When Marcus arrived, she led him to the balcony where she had set a small table with candles and wine, a deliberate signal that this was not their usual co-parenting discussion. This looks serious, he observed, taking the seat she offered. It is. Vivian poured them each a glass of wine, gathering her courage. I've been thinking about what you said, about still having feelings for me. Marcus nodded, his expression carefully neutral. And I've realized something. She met his gaze directly. I'm afraid. Of me. The question held pain. Of trusting you. Of believing in this change. Of opening myself to the possibility of being hurt again. Vivian took a deep breath. When you rejected our child, you didn't just reject the pregnancy or the responsibility. You rejected the future I had begun to imagine with you. And that broke something in me, Marcus. I know. His voice was quiet, accepting. And I wouldn't blame you if you decided you could never trust me again. But that's just it. Vivian leaned forward slightly. I find that I do trust you with Sophia. I've watched you become an amazing father, consistent and loving and completely committed. You've proven yourself there, beyond any doubt. Hope flickered in his eyes. But trusting you with my heart again feels like a much bigger risk. She twisted her wine glass slowly. The thing is, I think I'm falling in love with you again, or maybe I never stopped, just buried those feelings under anger and hurt. But loving someone and trusting them enough to build a life together are different things. What would help you trust me? Marcus asked simply. Not just as Sophia's father, but as a partner? The directness of the question surprised her. The old Marcus would have tried to persuade her, to overwhelm her doubts with charm or grand gestures. This Marcus was asking what she needed, centering her feelings rather than his own agenda. Time, Vivian answered honestly, and a different kind of relationship than we had before. I'm not the same person I was when we met, Marcus. Becoming Sophia's mother has changed me. I know my worth now in a way I didn't before. I won't compromise my independence or my voice. Not for anyone. I wouldn't want you to. His response was immediate. The woman you've become, strong, certain, fiercely protective of Sophia, while still pursuing your own passions. That's the woman I've fallen in love with. Not some memory of who you were before. Vivian studied him, searching for any sign of the calculating businessman who had once viewed relationships as transactions. Instead, she saw only openness, vulnerability, and a patience that the old Marcus had never possessed. I'd like to try, she said finally, not jumping back into what we had before, but building something new, slowly, with clear eyes about who we both are now. The smile that transformed Marcus's face was genuine, lighting his eyes with a joy that couldn't be feigned. That's more than I dared hope for. But, Vivian added firmly, Sophia remains our priority. If this doesn't work between us, we can't let it affect our co-parenting relationship. Agreed, absolutely. Marcus reached across the table, his hand open in invitation. We'll take it as slowly as you need, Vivian. I'm not going anywhere. She placed her hand in his, the simple contact sending a familiar warmth through her. This was a beginning, tentative, cautious, but real. A second chance neither of them had expected but both now welcomed. Over the next few months, Vivian and Marcus navigated their evolving relationship with careful attention to boundaries and communication. They began with simple dates, dinners after Sophia was asleep with Elaine babysitting, afternoon walks along the lakefront while Sophia napped in her stroller, quiet evenings talking on Vivian's balcony. They rediscovered each other slowly, learning who they had become in the time apart. Vivian shared stories of her pregnancy and Sophia's birth that Marcus had missed, not to make him feel guilty, but to include him in the full history of their daughter's life. Marcus opened up about his childhood in ways he never had during their first relationship, helping Vivian understand the roots of his former fear of fatherhood. By Sophia's first birthday in July, they had established a new rhythm as a family, not living together, but deeply connected, with Marcus present for daily moments both significant and mundane. The birthday celebration they hosted together at Vivian's apartment was a joyful affirmation of how far they had come, surrounded by friends who had supported Vivian through her pregnancy and early motherhood, now witnessing the family they had become. As summer turned to fall, Marcus approached Vivian with an unexpected proposal. They were sitting on a blanket in the park, watching Sophia toddle determinedly toward a pile of leaves, when he turned to Vivian with unusual seriousness. I've been thinking about our future, he began, about what kind of family we want to be for Sophia. Vivian felt a flutter of anxiety. Are you about to propose? Because I'm not sure we're ready for. Not marriage, Marcus interrupted gently. At least not in the traditional sense. I know neither of us wants to rush into that kind of commitment. Then what? A family commitment ceremony, he explained. Not legally binding like marriage, but a meaningful declaration of our intentions toward each other and Sophia. A way to honor the family we're building, unconventional as it may be. Tell me more, Vivian said, intrigued by the concept. We would write our own promises to each other, to Sophia, and as a family unit. We could include Elaine and other important people in our lives. It would be a celebration of our journey and a declaration of our values going forward. What kind of values? Vivian asked, watching as Marcus gently redirected Sophia from eating a leaf. Honesty, respect for each other's independence, commitment to communication, even when it's difficult, prioritizing Sophia's well-being while still nurturing our relationship. He looked at her directly, and a promise that whatever form our family takes in the future, it will be built on mutual support rather than traditional roles or expectations. The thoughtfulness of the suggestion moved Vivian deeply. This wasn't a man trying to claim her or control their future. This was a partner proposing a celebration that honored her independence while still affirming their connection. "I love that idea," she said softly. "It feels right for who we are now." Marcus's smile was radiant. "Really? You'd want that?" "Yes." Vivian reached for his hand. "A ceremony that celebrates our choice to be a family on our own terms. That's perfect." Sophia chose that moment to return to their blanket, plopping down between them with a triumphant grin and a handful of crumpled leaves. Both parents laughed, embracing their daughter between them in a moment of simple, perfect joy. The family commitment ceremony took place on a crisp October afternoon in the sculpture garden of Vivian's gallery. They kept it intimate, just 30 guests including Elaine, who had been asked to officiate, Rebecca and her husband, Vivian's colleagues from the art world, and the few people from Marcus's life who had supported his transformation. Sophia, now 15 months old and walking confidently, served as both flower girl and ring bearer, toddling down the aisle in a simple white dress with a basket of rose petals that she alternately scattered and tried to eat. Vivian had chosen a flowing blue dress rather than traditional white, while Marcus wore a suit without a tie, both of them rejecting convention in favor of authenticity. They stood beneath an arch of autumn flowers, holding hands as Elaine addressed the gathered friends. "We're here today to witness and celebrate a different kind of commitment," Elaine began. "Not a traditional marriage, but something perhaps more honest. A conscious choice to build a family based on respect, growth, and unconditional love. Vivian and Marcus have traveled a difficult road to reach this moment. Their journey reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come after painful endings, that transformation is possible when we have the courage to face our failures and the humility to change." Marcus spoke first, his voice steady as he addressed Vivian. "A year ago, I stood at your door, a broken man asking for a chance I didn't deserve. You could have turned me away, and no one would have blamed you. Instead, you found the strength to allow me into Sophia's life, to watch as I tried to become the father she deserves. In doing so, you taught me what real love looks like. Not possession or control, but freedom and support." He turned slightly to include Sophia, who was contentedly playing with the hem of Vivian's dress. "Today, I make these promises to both of you. I promise to honor your independence, Vivian, to support your dreams as fiercely as you've supported mine. I promise to be a father who listens more than he speaks, who guides without controlling, who shows Sophia through example what respect and partnership look like. And I promise that whatever challenges we face, I will face them with you, not as someone who needs to solve everything, but as a partner who stands beside you in both struggle and joy." Tears glistened in Vivian's eyes as she began her own vows. "Marcus, when you came back into our lives, I was determined to protect my heart and Sophia's. I had built walls to keep us safe, to ensure we would never be vulnerable to the kind of pain we had experienced. What I didn't expect was that in watching you become the father Sophia deserves, I would find myself falling in love with the man you've become." She squeezed his hands gently. "Today, I promise to continue our journey with an open heart, not forgetting our past, but not defined by it either. I promise to build a home with you where Sophia grows up seeing what healthy love looks like. I promise to honor your role as her father while maintaining my own strength as her mother. And I promise that as we create this unconventional family, I will choose trust over fear, communication over assumption, and partnership over independence when it serves our highest good." Together, they knelt to include Sophia in a family promise, each placing a hand on their daughter's small shoulders. "To you, Sophia," they said in unison, "we promise a home filled with love and laughter, with room to grow into exactly who you are meant to be. We promise to put your well-being at the center of our family while showing you that parents can nurture themselves too. And we promise that whatever the future holds, you will always know how deeply wanted and cherished you are by both of us." As they exchanged simple bands, not wedding rings, but symbols of their commitment to this family they were building, Elaine concluded the ceremony with words that brought tears to many eyes. "What we witness today is not an ending or even a beginning, but a conscious continuation. Vivian and Marcus have already done the hardest work, facing painful truths, rebuilding trust, and creating a foundation of respect where there was once hurt. Today, they choose to move forward together, not because society expects it or tradition demands it, but because they have discovered that love, when combined with growth and accountability, can transform even the deepest wounds into sources of strength. The celebration that followed was joyful and relaxed, with Sophia toddling between guests, accepting cuddles and offering her own form of conversation. As evening approached, Marcus found Vivian standing slightly apart, watching their daughter charm Elaine with a game of peekaboo. "Any regrets?" he asked softly, slipping an arm around her waist. "Not a single one," Vivian replied, leaning into him. "This feels right. Honoring what we've built without pretending the hard parts didn't happen." "I was thinking about that moment in your doorway a year ago," Marcus said. "How close I came to losing this chance completely. If you had turned me away that night." "But I didn't," Vivian reminded him. "Something made me let you in, literally and figuratively." "What was it?" he asked curiously. "What made you open that door when you had every reason to keep it closed?" Vivian considered the question, watching as Sophia abandoned her game with Elaine to toddle determinedly toward her parents, arms outstretched in demand. "I think," she said as Marcus bent to scoop up their daughter, settling her between them, "I needed to believe that people can change, that mistakes, even terrible ones, don't have to define us forever. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it can mean finding a new way forward." Marcus nodded, his free arms still around Vivian. The three of them connected in a circle of touch. "I'll spend the rest of my life being worthy of that belief." "I know you will," Vivian replied, absolute certainty in her voice. "That's why I'm here." As the evening light softened around them, casting a golden glow over the sculpture garden, Vivian looked at the family they had created. Not perfect, not conventional, but deeply, authentically theirs. A family built not on obligation or appearance, but on choice, growth, and a love that had been tested and transformed by fire. In the end, the greatest gift Marcus had given her wasn't his presence in Sophia's life, though that was precious. It wasn't even his love, though that had healed wounds she thought would always remain open. The greatest gift was the opportunity to discover her own strength, to learn that she could stand alone if necessary, but could also choose to stand beside someone who had earned her trust through consistent action rather than empty words. And the greatest gift she had given him wasn't forgiveness, though that had been transformative. It wasn't even the chance to know Sophia, though that had changed him fundamentally. The greatest gift was the opportunity to become the man he was capable of being. A man defined not by wealth or achievement, but by integrity, accountability, and the courage to face his failures and grow beyond them. Together, they had written a new story, one that acknowledged the pain of the past while refusing to be limited by it. A story that would show Sophia that love, when authentic and earned, could be the most powerful force for transformation in a human life. As they joined their guests for the final celebration, Vivian caught Elaine's eye across the garden. Her mentor raised her glass in a silent toast, her expression a mixture of pride and approval. Vivian smiled in return, a wordless acknowledgement of the journey they had shared. From that first devastating day in Vivian's kitchen, when Marcus had rejected the pregnancy, to this moment of hard-won joy. Some might call it a happy ending, but Vivian knew better. This wasn't an ending at all, but a continuation. A choice to move forward together, eyes wide open, hearts fully engaged, creating day by day the family they all deserved. What would you have done in Vivian's position? Would you have given Marcus another chance? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories about women who rise from heartbreak stronger than before, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.